Hello, I'm Julian McKenzie.
And I'm Tristan and Julian.
Welcome to the Scrum Podcast. This is episode 91 of our great show. We are approaching the centennial mark. Can you believe it, Tristan? We are almost at that point where we will be at episode 100. I can't believe it. I'm really excited about it. I'm also really excited about today's guest. We have an Olympic bronze medalist with us and the commissioner of the women's side on LeagueOne Ontario, Carmelina Moscato. You can also catch her on OneSoccer. And I thought the conversation we had with her today was enthralling and very interesting to listen to with regards to what has been going down on the front of League One, how that's been affected by COVID-19. We get into it on the CPL side as well. And we even discuss how she got into broadcasting.
No, I love Carmelina Moscato. Honestly, she has been tremendous on OneSoccer. Her insight, her analysis of the game has been really, really cool. I love how OneSoccer has been bringing in more women on the show, on their broadcast crews. Got to give a shout out to Andy Petrillo. Got to give a shout out to Laura Armstrong as well. But Carmelina, wears many hats. We want to talk about that as well. I would be remiss if I didn't add the detail that she brings fire style to the OneSoccer broadcasts. I really dig her styling on the show. I don't know, that's just a small detail, but I do enjoy that. But yeah, so exactly, we talk about her work with being the commissioner of the women's division of LeagueOne Ontario, and also her work with Soccer Business about developing the professional pathway for women's soccer. Kind of gives you a little bit of a hint into what we kind of delve into as well. I really appreciate Carmelina for giving us a bit of her time. And we talk, there's a winner of the Island Games. Congratulations to either Forge FC or HFX Wanderers. I know I want a certain team to win. I'm not going to tell you because we do talk about who might win. I had to ask that question at the end. I had to. But amazing conversation. I really, really dig this. I always like talking about women's soccer, as you know, Julian. Let's get into this.
Well, Carmelina also tried to give us a prediction for the Island Games final, which, if you are listening to it on Monday, was yesterday. Was she right? Was she wrong? Or was she diplomatic? You'll have to listen on to figure that out. Without further ado, take it away, Carmelina Moscato.
Hi, my name is Carmelina Moscato. I'm the LeagueOne Ontario Commissioner of the Women's Division, former Olympic bronze medalist, and working on the Canadian Women's Pro Strategy, as well as a lot of other things.
Carmelina, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Scrum Podcast. You have a lot of different things going on, so we'll jump right into it here with the questions. We know sports have pretty much returned all over the world, not just in North America, and closer to home here in Canada, the Canadian Premier League has also been underway. They had their Island Games tournament down in Prince Edward Island. It's pretty much going to serve as their 2020 season. By the time you are all listening to this episode, a champion will have been crowned between Forge and the Halifax Wanderers. Just wanted to know, what were your overall impressions of this year's Island Games?
Yes. So on a human level, because I like to always reference that almost first sometimes, I think it's brought a lot of people entertainment, a lot of people hope in a year that has been, less than perfect, dark in some cases, lots of changes, lots of things going on around that we cannot control. So I think what it's done on that level is, brought people around the screen and started to celebrate the sport we all love. From a league standpoint, it was extremely important to continue the momentum from first year, be in the hearts and minds of Canadians, and hopefully internationally, we hopefully get that feed out, but more so for Canadians, and to make sure that these men, get all the credit that they deserve for all their hard work. It's ticked a lot of boxes, I think.
So we here at the Scrum, we like to talk about the broadcast side of things. And on the broadcast side of things, you've been in front of the camera as well. You were on the TSN coverage during the 2019 World Cup. and now you find yourself on the OneSoccer broadcast crew. So, and you are also doing the OneSoccer happy hours during the pandemic, which I thought was a really great, I think was one of the great things that OneSoccer brought this year, on a personal level. But I want to know, how has the experience been to join the CPL's official broadcaster?
Oh, it's been an honor. I mean, not only to cover just sort of the men's game. I mean, I referenced that one time. A female covering men's sports is still something we have to sort of talk about. I think it's still relevant and important. I think that's a barrier that hopefully will provide more opportunity for more women in the future. So I feel grateful in that sense, and I feel honored. But the game's the game. So I'm excited to speak about, I'm an analyst. So I talk about what I see, what I pick up from having played the game. And in that way, and not in many ways, there's not many differences, right? It's tactics and players and what they're looking to do. And it's been a real pleasure to speak and talk about soccer again.
What was that transition like, going from being a player to jumping onto the broadcast side? And you say it's as easy as pretty much, discussing tactics and what you're normally used to as a player, but what's it like making it work for broadcast television?
It's a great question. I'll go back to when I started. I had a great coach in Luke Wildman back with my TSN beginning. So, to work with sort of the king in the king in his position. I mean, listen, I feel very lucky that he was able to coach me. He came from the UK sort of broadcast world, very traditional in the best possible way. So he taught me, you speak here, you speak there. This is when we can converse. Gave me a great framework when I went into that World Cup. So I feel forever grateful for Luke. And then now, as my time with OneSoccer, you can tell they want it to be more conversational, more what's the best word here? Sort of bringing those controversial points, getting people involved, talking about the sport. So it's a little bit different, but I admire sort of the approach of what they're trying to do is to get people engaged. So I had to switch my style a little bit because, being a color commentator and then going and trying to be pithy with Andy Petrillo and try to say really, things that'll stick with people and get to your point quickly. It's different. I don't get to, I got the gift of gab. I love to talk and I would prefer a conversation. But it's just an adaptation, a new skill.
I'm happy you have the gift of gab because we are all about talking here on the Scrum. You mentioned Andy Petrillo, actually. OneSoccer has had all-women panels of 2 or 3 during the tournament, including herself and Laura Armstrong. We're just curious, how was it to have this all-woman broadcast crew to talk about soccer regardless of gender? Did you even think about that?
Not really at this point, to be honest. I almost feel like I have to say it for almost just others. But for me, I feel comfortable in the setting. It's a great crew. I mean, Andy and Laura are tremendous to work with. We can't wait to work together again in some hopefully happy hour reincarnate comes back in the fall or something of the sort. So I'm really proud of just the women in this industry and just what, it's not as easy to get to where you got to go, and you almost have to, work a little harder, but that's just how it goes, and no worries. And I'm happy to do that.
Is there a favorite moment that you have from those times? Maybe it's a happy hour, maybe it's some broadcast. I know when I first saw the first panel where it was I think it was you and Andy and Laura, all 3. I think I tweeted about that right away. I was like, this is really great. This is the first time we see this for a men's soccer perspective, which I thought was really cool. But is there a moment that stands out for you?
Well, I have to admit, happy hour was, a breeze because we were talking to my friends. Everyone on that show I had either played with, can call them a best friend at some point in my life. So that show, it's going to be different in the future where we have guests I don't know so intimately and so well. But it was just literally what the show described. Those were some of my favorite moments, were to put my friends at the front and center of a conversation because they're amazing people. And, specifically the one that stands out is Steph Labbe and Georgia Simmerling. We're in basically an insight into their home, and then they get a few deliveries from Amazon. It was just we were literally hanging out with them. So it felt very organic, but yeah, just extracting the great stories from my buddies. That was really cool.
Yeah, that one was beautiful. I really liked that one.
Yeah.
The doorbell rang all the time. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, COVID deliveries, online shopping.
Yeah, exactly. So on the more on-field side of things, as you were saying, you've been the commissioner of the women's division of LeagueOne Ontario for about a year now, and in the grander scheme of things, you also work for Canadian Soccer Business. For the folks who don't know, it's the business wing of the Canadian Premier League. They acquired LeagueOne in 2019. How did this opportunity to have that double hat type thing came about?
Well, so right after that World Cup where I was an analyst, it was right in a transitional point in my career. I had left a technical director position at a club called Kleinberg Nobleton here, just up the street in Vaughan. And to make a long story short, I was in a position where I had taken on the technical director role. It wasn't a great fit for me. I loved the media side, but that wasn't going to be full time. So I ended up just really pausing on my life at that time and just said, listen, the next thing I do, I want it to be purposeful. I want it to be big and the scale to be like my impact to be bigger. So I was going to wait for as long as that took. And then when I realized, I might have an opportunity when CSB did approach me, Eva Havera specifically, an opportunity to grow the women's game, I said to myself, I don't know where this is going, absolutely, but I'm gonna dive in because I see an opportunity here. And then League One has given me that chance to see, if that is the highest level of league, that and PLSQ in our country, and where can we go from here? So it's been an incredible year. I'm really sad I didn't get to see it come to fruition. We all are. We wanted to see those women perform and shine, and we just have to wait a little bit longer for that.
I'm going to be that guy and plug some old episodes that we have just because you mentioned Stephanie Labbé and Andy Petrillo. If you want to go back, Stephanie Labbé was on episode 17 of this podcast and Andy Petrillo was on episode 62. I had to be that guy. I'm sorry. I have to do that. I want to follow up on Tristan's question. Did you ever see yourself at any point while you were playing becoming a league commissioner? While you were still in your playing days or working on the management side of soccer?
No, I mean, without a doubt, no. So the first thing that was planted into my head, I guess, in terms of dreams or next steps was coaching. And that was echoed by an opportunity I had directly from Canada Soccer, forever grateful. I had a year as a Rex talent manager, traveling the country, managing those high performance centers, implementing coach education. It was just a dream, to be honest, coaching youth national teams and, really accelerating my coaching licenses as well. So I sit here today as a UEFA A coach with nowhere to coach. And I say nowhere to coach because really the opportunities at the national level are few and far between. That's, of course, the pinnacle. And they're not always going to be there. And then, I want to coach at the pro level. So to do that, I'd have to leave Canada. But then it's a cyclical argument because I want to improve Canadian soccer. So I don't truly want to leave and go coach somewhere else. It's a little bit, it feels selfish for me to go and just coach somewhere else and then come back and nothing's changed. I feel like I can be an agent of change and I'm going to try my best to do something.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Wow, that's really fast. That's really fascinating to be in that dilemma where you're thinking, well, I want to leave and really grow. Well, I mean, you could still, in some ways, grow the profile of Soccer Canada from taking a job abroad. I mean, even though right now it's kind of a tough situation with COVID-19, has that ever crossed your mind at all, or what's it like being in that dilemma where you want to grow the game at home, but you also want those opportunities elsewhere?
Well, I would say now it seems like genius move, clearly not intentional because I would be out of a job if I were a coach somewhere else, likely. But yeah, no, it's an easier one to pick right now because I have my whole life to coach. I don't want to get rusty. So I'm still going to get some hours with a local club here and just keep sharpening my teeth and my skills over the winter time because I don't want to lose touch with the grass. Don't get me wrong, but I would say my time is best spent in strategy right now. And unfortunately, I say politics doesn't always have to be bad, but strategy and politics are where I'm sort of at right now. I'll take it.
I'd be remiss if because Julian mentioned the episode we did with Steph Labbé. I possibly had the most volcanic rant ever when Steph Labbé got basically turned down from playing for the foothills. But anyway, so a few weeks ago there has been a bit of news, a bit of, as you were mentioning a little earlier, a bit of negative news when it comes to the cancellation of the 2020 League One season due to, of course, COVID-19, the big COVID pandemic of 2020. How much of a setback is this for you and for your league?
It's a setback in the sense of, people have gone through it this year, financially, emotionally. The people we're dealing with, we hoped to deliver something, even a tournament that even looked like the Challenge Cup or looked like the Island Games, something that gave people something to actually, train for, to aspire to. And we really couldn't get that off the ground. As a league in total, we're going to implement what we planned this year, next year. That is the plan. This year was going to go very, a lot of adjustments were made and we felt confident with the plan. The only thing we will adjust are public safety and health, meaning no fans or things of that nature. And I just feel for the players. I think there's some players that feel they missed a year of scouting opportunities, especially on the men's side right now. I didn't get a chance to be seen. It feels like a lost year. But I really try to reframe that for a lot of people. I mean, I think we're all different now than we went into COVID. You learn something new about yourself or otherwise. Like, it's a luxury in some cases for some players to be able to learn about the game differently, and not in a physical way, but maybe mentally, maybe studying. If you haven't found a way to improve yourself during this time, and you don't have to push for the moon, but I'm saying do something productive, I would say that's on us, on yourself, So that's what I try to tell the players. You got to keep pushing because you're going to get this year back. But they don't feel like it. I know that for sure.
That's so unfortunate.
That is tough.
Maybe one last one on LeagueOne Ontario, because there was a report earlier in the year from Quebec Soccer Magazine that was reporting or hinting that there were closer ties. Merger's been in the talks, but it's still very up in the air. But there definitely is partnership between League One and PLSQ. And it very much seemed like it was the men's side. But, I can't not ask this question with the commissioner of the Women's League One Ontario with us. Is there some sort of closeness or more communication between the PLSQ and League One on the women's side?
Yeah, there is. I mean, this year, if it were to have been normal, we would have had a Final Four event that we wanted to sort of promote and get to, have our top two of our league play PLSQ top two, give some incentive for these women. Because as you know, there's no other level. There's no progression out that is, actually formalized. So what we wanted to do was give them something to play for. So that's a little introduction to where it could go. Maybe not a full merger right away, but I think it only works in the senior women's game's best interest to combine all those great players and perhaps have a regionalized league of some sort, because it just makes a lot more sense to combine those regions. I think that it would get players really excited about new competition.
So here's a bit of a thing I wanted your input on, because you were talking a little bit about the Challenge Cup and the NWSL, and it is a thing that we're seeing a bit of momentum with the NWSL recently. I would like to think. So a few months ago, as we know, the Challenge Cup tournament started. They got a lot of credit because they were the first league to restart. It went really well, apart from the Orlando Pride that couldn't join, but they didn't have a single case, and it was a very good, a good result. In French, I would say a réussite. And since then, there's been a bit of a movement in Canada to bring one or more franchises. There's been a couple of Twitter accounts that are started, NWSL to Toronto, to Montreal, to Vancouver. And for myself, whenever I seem to talk about this, a lot of people answer back that any franchises would kill any momentum for any sort of professional league in Canada. And I was wondering, because I think my standpoint would be, if I had the money to bring in a franchise, I would do so right away to give a professional opportunity to women in Canada. But a lot of people seem to think of that as a controversial statement. And I was wondering, in your opinion, would the NWSL in Canada impede on professional women's soccer in Canada?
So no, I have a lot to say about this. I mean, apples and oranges for me. So I think NWSL would continue to, it would bring a spectacle to a certain market and city where little girls, little boys can go and watch and become inspired, and it becomes part of that city's fabric. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But on a practical level, it would continue to service the 0.0001% of players in terms of an opportunity to progress. So really what my head is into in my portfolio right now with CSB is looking at more of a nationwide Canadian league. It doesn't have to be dissimilar to the CPL, but we're by no obligation to mimic the CPL. Like, what are some other unique solutions to our unique Canadian problems, which is geography, which is, infrastructure is not really set for the women's game. We don't need 30,000 seat stadiums, 10,000 seat stadiums. It's not what it's going to be, especially after COVID. So all that to say, NWSL is great. I think it would continue the momentum and the conversation around women's football, but it really doesn't help progress our pathway. I'm more interested in progressing the women's pathway, which beyond 17 is quite grim. Here in Canada, the opportunities are extremely limited. So I'd be trying to serve with the solutions I'm working on. It's more 99% of women, the other 99% of women. I think we're good with the top end. They're getting serviced, and they have markets that are, they're very valuable now, and they can find their own markets. And that's fantastic. We need that for national team success. But what about the rest?
Can I just unpack this a little more? Because I think I'm with you on the fact that an NWSL team in Canada totally would be,
right,
subservient to the 0.01%, the players who are already well off. Could you just describe a little bit more why an NWSL franchise in Canada wouldn't exactly help out players beyond the age of 17 and why you're working so hard to create a pathway for them?
Yes, so as of right now, I mean, with the previous commissioner, Amanda Duffy, who's no longer there, we know it's Lisa Baird now, but with the previous commissioner, I know for a fact that, it would have really been an NWSL, an American franchise on Canadian soil. So what does that mean? Roster spots are limited. And, I think a lot of the discourse around in the past around NWSL Vancouver specifically was, we're not going to allow the Canadian national team to be in a full roster, because that's what it was looking like, all the allocated players in one place. And that's just not fair to the league. You're not meant to put in a national team. That's not how this works. So I think if they can negotiate better roster rules where it actually allows our Canadians to be considered as domestics, like MLS has sort of progressed to, I think that could be a feasible way to get more women playing at that level. I think that's really what it's about, is just roster spots. So you might, let's just say, let's dream a little bit. So we go down the line here and we have NWSL Toronto. That's where I am. NWSL Toronto comes to town. Fantastic. We have mostly an American roster here. And then guess what? There's a CONCACAF competition, and Canada's pro team needs to be represented. What does that mean? Well, it means that we'll have mostly American players representing Canada's pro team. It's not representative of our system. So I'm just trying to look down the line and how can we create our own product, showcase our own talent. Eventually, when there are club World Cups that FIFA's talked about, when CONCACAF runs something on the club level in our confederation, what then? Those are the questions I have. I don't have the answers for you, but that's really where my mind goes.
What are some of the hoops you find yourself having to jump through in order to get to that way where you could create some kind of equivalent to the CPL for women?
It's almost above my pay grade. I mean, I'm here to almost think about create and innovate and think of solutions, but I'm not a decision maker yet right now, right? I'm a manager of this portfolio, and I'm very proud to do it. But I mean, it's all above me in terms of senior leadership. I think Canada Soccer, once they carve it out and make sure that it's in the pathway, then they're going to, money's an issue. So then you would obviously work with CSB to achieve that money. That's the whole point of having the business arm. So I've said this time and time again. I mean, it's a collaboration that's really needed. And if either one were to do it alone, I don't think it would reach its full potential. So if Canada Soccer did what England did, which is create the WSL, do it in its best fashion, it always hits a sort of ceiling because you need the commercial level to take it to another level. And that's what they're finding. in England right now. EPL wanted to buy it, but then they didn't want to buy it. So I don't know what's going on there. But if you have a fully private league just created and conjured up by just the owners, then Canada Soccer's not involved. I mean, it cannot happen. Yeah. So you know what it just needs to be a great synergy. So I think it's all timing. I really do. Nobody wants to hear that because they want it yesterday. I have to imagine the powers that be are discussing this. I have to imagine. I'll be ready with some ideas when they want to talk.
And so can we start talking about, or are we at a point where there is a specific, or there is a timeline for something to be created, or is it still in a, development building steps? Because, even on the men's side, a lot of the arguments with the CPL and the reason it took so long was we don't want to launch this too early and then miss our opportunity.
Yeah, no, honestly, if I were to a timeline before COVID, maybe. Now it's not an excuse, but it's definitely a lot of things have been paused. I have to admit, like it's, whether, again, not ideas, you can still work very hard on something during COVID, but I'm talking about the actual money needed to, seed funding or people even entertaining these conversations. I think once this island game wraps up, I think most people will be in a better position to sort of talk about timelines and things, but I have to be honest, there are none right now. I know it's being worked on diligently. I can promise that. But I also know that a lot of these things sort of happen when there's pressure outside as well. Let's put it this way. If FIFA tells us there's a Club World Cup, I think we got to get moving, outside pressures as opposed to maybe an internal urgency needed for this. That's up to the leaders to decide if it's urgent. I think all of us here believe it is. I want to believe it is because that's what I wake up thinking about. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. It's being worked on. I know the conversations are happening more than ever, which is really positive.
We know about the strides the women's national team have done in terms of the exploits that they have. You're a bronze medalist, and you've ascended to the point where you're a commissioner of LeagueOne Ontario, and that's one way of looking at it for Canadian soccer. We can talk ad nauseum about what players on the men's side have started to do on top of what the women have already done. When you take into stock everything that has transpired pretty much over the last decade or so, what are your impressions of the growth of the sport in our country?
Insanely cool. I mean, I'll be honest with you, what Canada Soccer has been able to do for this cohort, for this generation, and now this next core is beyond, we owe them beyond thanks. I mean, they were the ones that sort of allowed us to create the NWSL right after the big bronze, the hosting of the 2015 World Cup, bringing all that success to all the markets and all the fans. And I mean, listen, it's all, there's no complaints here. We've all benefited from the great work. Peter Montopoli, Sandra Gage, that whole organization, John Herdman. I mean, this guy's changed our lives. But now it's really about next steps. That's all it is. That's all we're talking about is, we've had a great decade. We've had a fantastic decade, in fact. So what's next? I want to get excited about something else. So it's continued national team success, which I personally believe will take a domestic league of some sort to support.
All right. Well, I mean, you've been on OneSoccer talking about the CPL the whole time. We're technically, the listeners are listening to this on Monday.
Okay.
Who are we congratulating? Are we congratulating?
Killing me here. I mean,
oh my God.
I'm going to get roasted either way. I'm going to play the diplomatic card here. I cannot do this to my
wow.
Forge pedigree. Consistency, goal scorers among scoring by committee. But if Halifax does this, you're going to see some incredible stuff. That's incredible. I mean, that's one of the stories that I think we can all hang our hats on, but it's going to be incredibly difficult to take down the Forge team and with their experience. So I'm on the edge of my seat. I'll be dead honest with you. I have no affinity. to either one. I'm just a fan of the game here. And Halifax would be a pretty cool story.
I tried.
Man.
For the record, I did give a 2-1 Halifax prediction, which is
there you
bold.
go.
It's
Okay.
bold, but I'm flying the Quebec flag. So many Quebecers, so many local guys on that team. I can't root against them.
I don't blame you on that front. I don't blame you at all.
By the time, listeners, you will be listening to this episode, there will have been a winner in this year's Island Games. And I hope by the next time we speak to Carmelina Moscato on this podcast, there will be even more developments on her side in League One, and maybe even more things to talk about on the happy hour on OneSoccer. Carmelina, we can't thank you enough for joining us on this week's episode of the Scrum Podcast. It was an absolute pleasure to have a whole conversation with you. You said it yourself. You have the gift of gab and you love conversations, and I hope this conversation was as enlightening to you as it was to us.
It definitely was. Honored to be on your show. Thank you guys for taking the time, and it was a lovely conversation.
All right.
Hey everybody, before we get to the end of this week's episode, we've got to give a big shout out to MyBookie for sponsoring this week's episode. Winning season returns at MyBookie. What does winning season even mean? It means doubling your first deposit. It means insane props, epic bonuses, and the craziest cross-sport wagers. At MyBookie, winning season means watching live sports and betting live sports all season long.
Rejoice! The NFL has returned. That means packed Sundays packed with action and huge cash prizes. Get in on the action. You can use promo code SPN and double your first deposit. New players get up to $1,000 in free play, designed to add more. A rack in money. Excitement to sports you love and the games you bet. Bet with the best this NFL season for your chance to win big. Use promo code SPN and double your first deposit. Your winning season begins today, only at MyBookie.
Thank you for listening to the Scrum Podcast. If you want to send us questions or share your stories, you can shoot us an email at thescrumpodcast@gmail.com.
You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Scrum Podcast, and us individually. I'm at Tristan D'Amour with an S at the end, and Julian is at JKA McKenzie.
You may have caught our ad read for MyBookie a couple moments ago. I thought it was pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool to have MyBookie on in terms of sponsoring us for this show. Are you interested in doing so? Shoot us an email at thescrumpodcast@gmail.com. We'll give you a quote.
Be like MyBookie. Please sponsor the show.
Not your bookie, MyBookie.
Exactly. But you know what? You can also support us. I swear to God, this is the favorite part.
It's the best thing of the show. Oh, man.
Support us for free by leaving a rating and a review wherever you listen to this podcast. And by sharing this episode with a friend.
Special thanks to Cooper Richardson for letting us use his music as our intro. His SoundCloud link is in the description. He's a great artist. He's a great guy.
This show is produced and edited by Kevin Laramie, a.k.a. Producer Kevin. Thank you so much, Producer Kevin. As part of the Sports Podcasting Network, hint SPN, right? Remember SPN, the promo code? Yeah. Anyway,
we haven't sold out at all.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
Big thank you to Kevin Laramie. Big thank you to Carmelina Moscato of OneSoccer and LeagueOne Ontario for joining us on this week's episode of the Scrum Podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation we had with Carmelina. She was really great, and I really mean it. I hope we're able to have her on a future episode of this show. Tristan, I'm sure you must have thought this episode was spectacular to do with Miss Moscato.
Oh my God, absolutely. I would be remiss to finish the outro read by plugging the SPN website, sportspodcastingnetwork.com, to find out all about the great shows on the network. Yes, this was absolutely one of the shows that I was the more excited about. I'm not going to hide this. If you follow me on Twitter, you've been seeing me, repping the, I really enjoy what Carmelina and what Laura Armstrong brought to the table on OneSoccer. Hopefully we can get Laura on as well, because she does, not only soccer, she's all over and she's been killing it as well. So shout out to her. But yes, absolutely. I really dug this episode. I'm really glad that Carmelina took the time to talk with us about everything, right? We talk about the media side of things on the Scrum, but we also talk about, more sports related stuff. And today was about more than just her appearances on OneSoccer and her time at LeagueOne Ontario. So I'm really, really grateful for this. Julian, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
And, we'll be back with episode 92 of the Scrum podcast. But as always, we'll hear you all next time.
Oh,